After discovering my CEO husband can't let go of his divorced single mother ex, I started teaching our son to call him uncle. When our son had a fever, and his ex called him away in the middle of the night, I touched our son's burning forehead and had him say, "Goodbye, uncle," every time. Our son hesitated for so long, until later, when my husband finally realized what he owed us. He took the initiative to suggest we take family photos together. At the entrance of the photo studio, the ex called again, sobbing on the phone. "Evan, can you come pick up Tanner from kindergarten right now? The other kids are making fun of him for not having a dad." Reluctance flashed across my husband's face. He was about to crouch down and explain to our son. This time, without any prompting from me, our son waved him away. "It's okay, uncle. You go be with your other kid. Mom and I are enough for a family photo." The moment our son said those words, both Evan Harrison and I froze. He said it smoothly and naturally, as if he'd rehearsed the word countless times in his heart. He pulled me along, step by step, toward the photo studio. The family photo session was something Evan had suggested, to make up for missing our son's school event. Our son had been looking forward to it for half a month. I stiffly followed him, my heart feeling like it was being crushed by a stone. The suffocating pressure, making me want to cry. I discovered Evan's affair by accident. He went to celebrate Vivian's child's birthday. And when he came back, he forgot about the tickets in his pocket. 3 tickets to Universal Studios. For our son's 6th birthday, he wished for the whole family to go to Universal Studios together, to see his favorite Minions. Evan thought it was childish and rejected the idea without hesitation. A few days later, though, he went with Vivian's child. I found Vivian's Instagram post on Evan's phone. "The most magical place should be visited with the best dad." Photo showed Evan and Vivian holding a child, a picture of the 3 of them together. Vivian was his first love, divorced with a child. That night we had our most explosive fight. I insisted on divorce and taking our child with me. Evan accused me of being unreasonable. He asked how I could bear to let our child grow up without a father. He swore to God that he only felt sympathy for Vivian. Looking at our son's obviously frightened face, I bit my lip until it nearly bled. I knew that if I forced our son to leave with me, he would never forget Evan. But I also knew that if it happened once, it would happen a second time, a third time. I didn't want my child to suffer because of his so-called sympathy. So, I chose another approach. I tricked Evan into signing divorce papers. 30 days until the divorce became official. During those 30 days, if Evan came to his senses, I would pretend nothing had happened, for our son's sake. If not, I would spend those 30 days doing everything I could to help our son become desensitized. Today was day 28. Our son had called Evan uncle on his own. I felt our son's slightly trembling body, but I wasn't happy. Felt like 1,000 needles piercing my heart. As we crossed the street, Evan finally snapped out of it. He took a few steps after us, wanting to ask our son what was going on, when Vivian called again, still with that delicate, sobbing voice. "Evan, where are you? Tanner keeps crying and saying he wants his daddy. I can't calm him down." Evan's steps halted. He stared at our backs, phone in hand, and replied, "Okay, I know. I'll be right there." After hanging up, he sent me a text saying, "Let's talk tonight," then turned and left without hesitation. The roar of a car engine started up, then faded into the distance. Our son stopped walking and buried himself in my arms, tears soaking my clothes. "Mom, can we not have dad anymore? We didn't take the photos." I took our son straight home. I started packing. While I was booking plane tickets back to my hometown, Vivian sent me a video. The setting was another well-known photo studio in the city. Vivian and Evan were wearing matching outfits, holding a child around 5 years old, posing for the camera. At the end of the video, Vivian taunted me as usual. "It's just a family photo. Evan and I can take one anytime." If this had been before in Vivian's provocation, I definitely would have snapped back immediately. But now, watching our son carefully organizing his toys, I only had one thought: how pointless. I exited the chat and booked 2 tickets to Seattle for the day after tomorrow. Just after I paid, Evan came home carrying a strawberry cake. Both our son and I stared in surprise. In the past, he hated strawberry cake the most. Because of this, even though our son inherited my crazy love for strawberries, he would only choose Evan's favorite, matcha mousse, for his birthday. But today, why did he suddenly bring home a strawberry cake? Our son and I looked at each other, both finding it unbelievable. Evan slowly walked in and saw the open luggage. His expression changed slight. Tanner was crying so hard, I stayed with him a bit longer. On my way back, I remembered you both love strawberry cake. So I bought one. Why are you packing? Are you going on a trip? I shook my head, then nodded. I guess so. With only 2 days left until the divorce became official, I didn't want any unexpected complications. Hearing my words, Evan seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Before continuing, the photo studio called me and said you didn't show up. I rescheduled. How about tomorrow? I absolutely won't bail this time. He crouched in front of our son and said it very seriously. Our son paused while organizing his toys, looked at him, then at me, as if he was torn or as if he didn't dare believe anymore. I noticed our son wavering, and my heart softened. Okay, it was only going to be the last time anyway. After I agreed, our son's eyes immediately lit up. He grabbed his toys and ran into his room. After he left, I continued packing. Evan came over to me. He struggled before speaking. By the way, about our son calling me uncle today. My heart skipped a. I looked up at him. Evan crouched down, placing the strawberry cake beside me. His voice was helpless but affectionate. Zoe, I know what you're thinking. You think I'm too nice to Vivian, and that I've been neglecting you and our son. But I swear I only feel sympathy for Vivian. She's a single mom. I just don't want her to suffer too much. He took my hand and placed it solemnly over his heart. Give me a little more time. I promise I'll handle things with Vivian and her son properly. I won't let you and our son be wronged. Stared at him blankly. I could barely remember the last time he looked at me so seriously. Maybe it was at our wedding. In the pristine chapel. He held my hand and vowed to treat me well for the rest of his life. Or maybe it was the day our son was born. In the hospital delivery room, he carefully held our son in his arms and trembled as he kissed my forehead. Then he said, Zoe, I will never let you or our son suffer any injustice. Thinking about those past moments, I was silent for a long time. Finally, I decided to tell him about the divorce. Actually, where did you put that limited edition Lego set I bought for our son last time? Is it in the study cabinet? Vivian says Tanner's really into Lego lately. I'll take it over for him to play with for a few days. After speaking, Evan went to the study, found the Lego set, grabbed his car keys, and hurried out the door. Bang! The door closed. Evan's figure disappeared. I stared quietly at the door for a long time. Then I finished the sentence I hadn't completed. Actually, our son and I don't need you anymore. Only 2 days left until we left. At midnight, after finally finishing all the packing, I lay exhausted in bed. My phone lit up. Was a message from Evan. Tanner really loved the Lego. I spent the whole evening helping him build it. Vivian specifically asked me to thank you. At midnight, my husband was thanking me on behalf of another woman. I pulled at the corner of my mouth, too speechless to even laugh. But I was too tired to be angry. Outcome was already decided anyway. I opened the chat and casually replied, no need to thank me, I didn't give it to her. Also, that Lego was our son's favorite birthday present. He's been waiting for you to have time to build it with him. After sending that message, I turned off my phone and closed my eyes to sleep. I didn't care about Evan on the other end, whose expression changed when he saw the message. The next morning at 8, Evan came home unusually early. He took off his coat as he entered and saw several neatly arranged suitcases in the living room. He froze in place. Do you need to pack this much for a trip? Without even putting down his coat, he walked to the bedroom with visible panic and asked me. I was helping our son get dressed and didn't look back. We're going far. Upon hearing this, he immediately looked at our son. Only after receiving a confirming nod did his expression relax. He put his coat aside and took out 3 Universal Studios tickets. Haven't you been upset that I didn't take our son to Universal Studios? I bought tickets for today. The 3 of us can go together. He displayed the tickets in front of me and our son, like he was showing off his face full of indulgence for a moment. I wondered if I'd misheard something. It had been almost a month since that incident, and he was only thinking of it now. But then I thought of the string of unread messages on my phone when I woke up this morning, and I suddenly understood. So it was compensation. I didn't say anything and continued focusing on dressing our son. But our son was incredibly excited, his eyes blinking as he stared at me. Mom, I want to go. My eyes curved into a smile. Before I could speak, I heard Evan stammer. But if you want to go, there's one condition. Vivian found out we're taking family photos today, and she's worried Tanner will be upset if he hears about it. So the family photo thing, let's do it another time. As he said this, his expression was full of guilt. Our son froze. The smile in his eyes visibly receded bit by bit. I see. He slowly lowered his head and said nothing more. His eyes turned red, but Evan didn't notice. He continued, it's just this one small request from Vivian. I thought about it, and it shouldn't be a big deal. We're just postponing the photos this time. There's always next time.
Lie.
What do you say? He didn't know that our son and I would be leaving tomorrow. This was his last chance. But neither our son nor I said anything. We just nodded silently.
Fine.
Okay. Evan breathed a sigh of relief, his face visibly showing a smile, as if a weight had been lifted. Then I'll tell Vivian right now. 3 o'clock this afternoon. Meet at Universal Studios. After speaking, he got up to leave. When he reached the door, he turned around. Honey, Leo, you're both so wonderful. Our son and I didn't say anything. After he left, our son jumped down from the bed and took out a backpack he prepared from the closet. Mom, I don't want to see Uncle anymore. Can we leave early? I looked down at my 6-year-old son. He stood there, a small, solitary figure, in the middle of a room that used to be his sanctuary, clutching his faded blue backpack. There were no tears in his eyes. There was no tantrum. Just a chilling, terrible clarity that no child should ever possess. Yes, baby, I whispered, my voice trembling but finding its anchor in his unwavering gaze. We can leave right now. I pulled out my phone and navigated to the airline app. It cost a small fortune to change our departure to the 11:30 a.m. flight out of JFK today, but money had lost all its meaning. The only currency I cared about now was distance. Distance from this house, distance from the suffocating air, distance from the man who had systematically dismantled our son's heart piece by piece. I moved mechanically, zipping up the last of the suitcases. I didn't take much. Clothes, important documents, and Leo's favorite books. I left behind the designer bags Evan had bought me for anniversaries, the expensive jewelry that served as apologies for late nights at the office. They felt contaminated. I walked into the kitchen, the sunlight streaming through the large bay windows, illuminating the pristine granite countertops.
There, sitting like a grotesque
monument to a fractured family, was the strawberry cake in its plastic container. Beside it, I placed my wedding band. The diamond, once a symbol of a promise in a pristine chapel, felt completely foreign against my skin.
It
clinked softly against the marble. Next to the ring, I left a plain, white envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the final instruction letter from my attorney. Tomorrow was day 30.
The
cooling-off period would expire, and my lawyer would file the final decree with the county clerk. Evan had signed the initial dissolution papers blindly. 28 days ago, his mind so preoccupied with Vivian's midnight crises that he hadn't even read the headers of the financial restructuring documents I'd placed in front of him. Mom, Leo tugged at the hem of my sweater. Are we going to be okay? I knelt down, meeting him at eye level. I smoothed a stray lock of hair from his forehead. We are going to be more than okay, Leo. We are going to be happy. I ordered a premium car service. As the black SUV pulled out of our driveway, I didn't look back. I pulled out my phone, blocked Evan's number, blocked his email, and disabled all my social media accounts. With a single tap, Evan Harrison ceased to exist in my digital world. The rain began to mist against the windows as we merged onto the highway toward the airport. I pulled Leo against my side, resting my chin on the top of his head. He fell asleep listening to the rhythmic hum of the tires on the asphalt. His small hands relaxed, finally letting go of the tension he had carried for months. Evan's perspective, 2:45 p.m. that afternoon. Evan checked his Rolex. The sun was beating down on the concrete of Universal Studios, casting harsh shadows. He stood near the entrance of the Minion Mayhem ride, holding 3 VIP FastPass lanyards. He felt a rare, self-satisfied smile playing on his lips. He had fixed it. Sure, he had canceled the photo shoot, but this was Universal Studios. What kid wouldn't prefer this? He checked his phone. 2:50 p.m. He dialed Zoe's number. The number you have reached is unavailable. Frowning, he tried again. Same automated voice. He opened their chat. His last few messages detailing where to park had only a single gray checkmark. Undelivered. Probably just underground parking, he muttered to himself, adjusting his sunglasses. His phone buzzed in his palm. The caller ID flashed Vivian. Evan sighed, a sudden, unfamiliar flicker of annoyance brushing against his
chest.
He answered. Vivian, I can't talk right now. Zoe and Leo should be walking up any second. Evan. Vivian's voice was breathy, laced with her trademark, fragile sob. Tanner threw his Lego set. It shattered everywhere. He's crying so hard he threw up. Please, Evan, he just keeps asking for you. He says you're the only one who can put it back together. A month ago, Evan would have felt a surge of protective adrenaline.
He would
Have pictured Tanner's tear-stained face and felt the intoxicating rush of being needed, of being the undisputed savior. But right now, standing in front of a giant yellow minion, surrounded by fathers carrying their sons on their shoulders, a strange hollow sensation echoed in his stomach. Vivian, Evan said, his voice tighter than usual. I spent 4 hours building that set with him last night. I am waiting for my son. I can't come over. But, Evan, give him an iPad, Vivian. I have to go. He hung up. He stared at a screen, shocked by his own abruptness. But the shock was quickly swallowed by a rising tide of panic. It was 3:30 p.m. He called Zoe again. Nothing. He called her sister.
blocked.
He called the house.
Landline.
It rang until the voicemail picked up. A cold sweat broke out on the back of his neck.
He remembered the suitcases in
The living room. We're going far, she had said, not looking at him.
He
Remembered Leo's quiet, devastating nod. Evan ran. He shoved past a group of teenagers, ignoring their shouts, and sprinted through the city walk toward the parking garage. He broke every speed limit on the drive back to the suburbs. His heart hammered violently against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat of no, no, no. He threw his car in park in the driveway, not even bothering to shut the door as he bolted up the front steps. He jammed his key into the lock and pushed the heavy mahogany door open. Zoe.
La.
The silence of the house hit him like a physical blow. It wasn't just quiet, it
was dead.
the subtle hum of life, the smell of Zoe's vanilla perfume, the clatter of Leo's toys, the sound of the television in the background, was entirely absent. He walked into the living room. The suitcases were gone. He stumbled into the kitchen. His breath hitched.
Sitting perfectly centered on
The marble island was the strawberry cake, and right next to it, glinting under the pendant lights, was Zoe's platinum wedding band. Evan's hands began to shake violently as he reached for the white envelope. Beside the ring,
he tore it open.
it wasn't a letter of anger. It wasn't a plea for him to change. It was a cold, formal legal document from a high-profile family law firm. Notification of final dissolution of marriage. Expiration of the 30-day mandatory waiting period as stipulated by the signed agreement dated. Evan couldn't breathe. His eyes darted over the legalese. Full physical and legal custody granted to the mother. No contest entered by the respondent. 30 days, he whispered to the empty room. The realization struck him with the force of a freight train. The papers she had asked him to sign a month ago, the ones she said were just for transferring some stock options into a trust for Leo. He had signed them while on the phone with Vivian, waving Zoe away because Tanner had a nightmare. He collapsed onto the kitchen stool, burying his face in his hands. A primal, agonizing sound ripped from his throat, echoing off the high ceilings.
He had
Spent the last 29 days soothing another man's child, playing house with a ghost of his past, while his wife meticulously dismantled their reality and his son learned to call him uncle. He pulled his phone out with trembling, desperate fingers, dialing his lawyer, his private investigator, anyone. But as he looked at the rotting strawberry cake, he knew he was already too late. 2 years later, Seattle, Washington. The Puget Sound breeze was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and salt water. Through the open windows of my studio, I wiped a smudge of charcoal from my cheek with the back of my wrist and stepped back to evaluate the drafting table. The architectural rendering of the new boutique hotel in downtown Seattle was finally complete. Mom, the front door of the studio burst open, and a breathless 8-year-old tornado rushed in. Leo was covered in mud, a massive grin splitting his face. He held up a tarnished silver trophy. We won. Coach Davis said my assist in the second half was the best pass of the
season.
I dropped my charcoal pencil and knelt down, catching him in a tight hug despite the damp earth clinging to his soccer uniform. I knew you could do it, baby.
I
am so incredibly proud of you. Coach Davis, a kind-eyed former college athlete who ran the local youth league, stepped into the doorway, smiling warmly. He played like a champion today, Zoe. You've got a natural leader on your hands. Thank you, Mark. For everything, I said. Anytime. See you at practice on Tuesday, buddy, Mark said, ruffling Leo's hair. Before waving goodbye, Leo ran to the sink to wash his hands, chattering excitedly about the game.
I
watched him, my heart swelling with a fierce, protective warmth. The transition to Seattle hadn't been easy. The first few months were characterized by sudden night terrors for Leo and a lingering, suffocating
exhaustion for me.
but I threw myself into my work, using my background in interior architecture to launch a boutique design firm. Seattle was kind to us. It offered anonymity, rain that felt like a baptism, and a community that didn't know the bruised versions of ourselves. Leo had flourished. The quiet, anxious boy who used to bite his lip until it bled while waiting for a father who never showed up was gone. In his place was a vibrant, confident child who laughed loudly, made friends easily, and loved fiercely. He hadn't spoken Evan's name in over 18 months. Later that evening, after a celebratory dinner of pizza and actual strawberry cake, I tucked Leo into bed. "Mom," he asked, his eyes heavy with sleep. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm really glad it's just us." I smiled, kissing his forehead. "Me too, Leo. More than anything." Thousands of miles away, in a sprawling, silent mansion in Florida, Evan Harrison sat in the dark, a glass of amber liquid sweating onto a mahogany coaster. His life had become an unrecognizable wasteland. The honeymoon phase with Vivian had shattered violently barely 3 months after Zoe left. Once Vivian moved into the house, her helpless single mother act evaporated, replaced by a demanding, entitled reality. Tanner, lacking boundaries and discipline, ran rampant. The breaking point had come on a rainy Tuesday. Evan had returned home from work, his company's stock plummeting because of his lack of focus, only to find Tanner in what used to be Leo's bedroom. The boy had found a box of Leo's old things that Evan had hidden away, a sanctuary of memories he couldn't part with. Tanner was gleefully stomping on a clay handprint Leo had made in kindergarten, shattering the painted ceramic into dust. Vivian had stood in the doorway, sipping a martini, and said nonchalantly, "Oh, Evan, don't be mad. He's just playing. You can always make another one if we have a baby." Evan had looked at the shattered handprint, the only piece of his son he had left, and something inside him snapped. The veil dropped.
He didn't see a
Helpless woman he needed to save. He saw a parasite. He saw the exact, excruciating price of his own vanity. He threw them out that night. Vivian's tears and sobs, which used to manipulate his heartstrings like a master puppeteer, suddenly sounded like nails on a
chalkboard.
For the past year and a half, Evan had poured his vast resources into finding
Zoe.
She had covered her tracks perfectly, using a newly formed LLC to rent their home and keeping her assets meticulously shielded by her aggressive legal team. But Evan's private investigators were relentless. His phone buzzed on the coffee table, illuminating the dark room.
It was an
email from the lead investigator. Subject: Z. Harrison and L. Harrison. Location confirmed. Evan dropped his glass. It shattered against the hardwood floor, but he didn't
care.
He opened the email. Attached was a photograph taken from across the street.
It was Zoe.
She was standing outside a brick-and-mortar design studio in Seattle, laughing as she handed a cup of coffee to a tall man in a tracksuit. Next to her was a boy. Evan's breath caught in his throat.
Leo was so tall. He
looked healthy, radiant, free. At the bottom of the email was an address. Evan didn't pack a bag. He grabbed his wallet, his keys, and drove straight to the airport. It was a Saturday morning, the kind of crisp, brilliant Pacific Northwest day, where the sky is a piercing, impossible blue. I was setting up a small exhibition of my firm's recent projects at a local community art fair in the
park.
Leo was sitting a few feet away on a picnic blanket, deeply engrossed in building a complex spaceship out of a massive bucket of Legos. "Need a hand with that easel?" I turned and smiled. Mark, Leo's soccer coach, was jogging over, dressed in a casual sweater and jeans. Over the past year, Mark and I had become close friends. There was a quiet, steady mutual respect between us, a slow-burning connection that I was finally allowing myself to explore. "I've got it, but you can help me hang this rendering if you want," I laughed. "Hey, Coach Mark," Leo yelled, waving a Lego astronaut in the air. "Captain Leo. Spaceship looking good, buddy," Mark called back, effortlessly, lifting the heavy wooden frame for me. I was adjusting the level on the frame when I felt it. A sudden, visceral drop in the air pressure. A prickle at the back of my neck, like the instinct of a prey animal sensing a predator in the tall grass. I slowly turned around. Standing 10 yards away, on the edge of the paved pathway, was Evan. For a second, the world entirely stopped spinning. The background noise of the fair, the acoustic guitarist, the chatter of families, the barking of dogs, faded into a dull roar. He looked terrible. The sharp, arrogant CEO who used to wear bespoke Italian suits like armor was gone. He looked 10 years older. There were deep, dark hollows under his eyes, and his shoulders were slumped, carrying an invisible, crushing weight. He wasn't looking at me. His bloodshot eyes were fixed entirely on the boy on the picnic blanket. He took a trembling step forward. Then another. Leo. Evan choked out. His voice was raw, broken, a sound scraped from the very bottom of a ruined soul. Leo paused. He put down the Lego brick he was holding. He looked up, squinting slightly against the sun. I froze, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Mark noticed my shift in posture and immediately stepped closer to me, his brow furrowing as he looked at the stranger approaching. I held up a hand, silently telling Mark to
Wait.
I needed to see this. I needed to know if the ghost of Evan Harrison still had any power over my son. Evan fell to his knees at the edge of the blanket. He didn't care about the mud soaking into his expensive trousers. He reached out a shaking hand, hovering just inches from Leo's shoulder, terrified to touch him, terrified he would
Disappear like a mirage.
Leo, buddy, it's me. It's Dad. Tears were openly streaming down Evan's face, tracing through the stubble on his cheeks. I've missed you so much. God, I am.
So sorry.
I'm so sorry. Leo looked at the crying man kneeling before him. He didn't flinch. He didn't shrink back in fear. He simply tilted his head, his expression calm, curious, and utterly devastatingly detached. Leo looked past Evan, finding my eyes. Mom. Leo's voice was clear, ringing out in the quiet space between us. Uncle. Evan is crying. Evan physically recoiled, as if he had been shot in the chest. A ragged gasp tore from his lips. No, Leo, please. Please don't call me that. I'm your father. I'm your dad. Leo looked back at Evan, his small brow wrinkling in genuine confusion. But you didn't want to be my dad. You wanted to be Tanner's dad. Remember?
You wanted to
take pictures with him. I was wrong. Evan sobbed, burying his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking violently. I was so stupid. I was blind. She tricked me. I swear I didn't mean to lose you. I left her, Leo. I kicked them out. It's just me now. I came to bring you home. Leo picked up his Lego spaceship, carefully securing a wing that had come loose. He looked at Evan with the profound, simple logic that only a child possesses. I am home, Leo said softly. He pointed toward me, and then to the small house, visible on the hill overlooking the park. Mom is my home. Evan let out a sound of pure agony. He reached forward, desperate to pull Leo into a hug, but before he could make contact, a shadow fell over them. I stood between Evan and my son. I looked down at the man I had once loved with every fiber of my being. The man I had birthed a child for. The man who had reduced me to a begging, weeping
shell.
Looking at him now, kneeling in the dirt, I searched myself for anger.
I
searched for vengeance. I found nothing, just pity, and an overwhelming, beautiful apathy. Get up, Evan, I said. My voice wasn't raised. It was ice cold and smooth. Evan looked up at me, his eyes wide and begging.
Zoe,
please. I'm begging.
You.
I'll do anything. I'll sign over the company. We can move anywhere. Just
give me a chance to fix this.
Give me a chance to be his father. You lost the right to that title a long time ago, I said calmly. The divorce is final. You surrendered your parental rights when you couldn't be bothered to read the documents you signed because you were too busy playing savior to another woman's family. You are nothing to us now. You are a biological footnote. You tricked me, he cried, a flash of the old, defensive Evan breaking through the despair. You trapped me with those papers. I gave you exactly what you asked for. I replied unflinching. I gave you 30 days. 30 days to look at your son. 30 days to prioritize us just
once.
You chose Tanner. You chose Vivian. Every single time. The papers just made it legal. Evan stared at me, the fight draining entirely from his eyes as the absolute truth of my words hit him. There was no Vivian to blame. There was no trick. There was only the mirror of his own choices, reflecting back the monster he had become. Please, he whispered, a broken man holding on to dust. He's my blood. If you ever approach him again, I said, my voice dropping to a deadly, quiet register. If you ever hire another PI to track my movements, I will file a restraining order. I will drag you through the courts, and I will make sure the press knows exactly what kind of man the great CEO, Evan Harrison, really is.
Do.
You understand me? Evan looked past me, trying to catch Leo's eye one last time. But Leo wasn't even looking at him. Leo had turned back to Mark, holding up his completed spaceship. Look, coach. It's ready to fly. Leo beamed. Mark smiled gently, keeping a protective stance near the blanket. Looks like it can go anywhere in the universe, buddy. Evan watched the exchange, and I saw the exact moment his heart finally, irreparably broke. He realized that the space he had vacated hadn't remained empty. Life had moved on. The world had continued spinning, and it had left him behind. Slowly, agonizingly, Evan pushed himself up from the mud. He looked at me, his eyes dead, completely devoid of light. He didn't say another word. There were no words left. He turned around and began to walk away. I watched his retreating figure as he disappeared into the crowd of the weekend market, just another stranger fading into the background of our lives. I let out a long, slow breath. The tension melted from my shoulders, drifting away on the Seattle breeze. Are you okay? Mark asked softly, stepping up beside me. I turned and looked at my son, who was making spaceship noises completely unbothered, safe, and happy. The sun broke through the gray clouds, casting a warm, golden glow over the park. The suffocating weight that had lived in my chest for years was entirely gone. I smiled, a real, radiant smile that reached all the way to my eyes. Yeah, I said, turning back to my drafting easel. I've never been better.